All right, welcome in. McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in. (9:19 a.m.) right here on Jocks 94.5. Told you we would open it.
We got some tech issues, it appears, at least at the moment. But we will get back to it for sure. We are going to go into the comments made yesterday by Hugh Freeze and the outrage that has since ensued. And look, I think one thing before we get to the actual comments themselves, I think people have a tendency to kind of freak out about things that are probably not worth freaking out about. Like, people use this, like, you won the game. Like, it's fine. This is Hugh Freeze talking to Tiger Talk and Auburn Sports Network. So understand the audience, understand the messaging, and who he's trying to reach. Let's take a listen.
I mean, no offense whatsoever to Arkansas or to Cal. I love Sam Pittman. I hope he wins the rest of his games. But I'm telling you, the hard truth is we play them 9 more times, we beat them 9 times. And that's what's hard to take. And it's hard for our fans, I'm sure, and it's certainly hard for us. And you have 460-something yards, and we only had 50-something plays of offense because we turned it over 5 times.
That, I mean, is what people are absolutely losing their mind about. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he is discrediting Arkansas. I don't interpret it that way. Maybe Cole feels differently. Maybe John feels differently. Maybe Damian feels differently. Obviously, Arkansas fans feel differently. But what he is suggesting to his partisan audience that's listening to that show, that if we do things a certain way, if we don't do this, if we don't do that, we don't lose the game. And that's anyone that's ever been in a locker room, anyone that's ever played on a team at a high level, I don't care if it's even high school. When you lost a game, those of you listening, it doesn't have to be football, by the way. It can be volleyball, it can be track, it can be, it can be softball, baseball, what have you. When you go back and you meet after the game with your team, you point out the plays that could have been made by you that could have altered the result. And that's just not that uncommon. So Cole, I'm just having a hard time understanding like where all the anger is coming from, because it feels like he's just talking to his team and he's talking to his fans.
I think he wanted to try to send the message to his fans that he believed they were in a good spot, and mistakes cost him that game. I for one, don't like going back with. I mean, people have heard me for a long time. There are no should haves in football. There are no could haves in football. If you should have, you would have. If you could have, you would have. It doesn't mean that there are things that maybe you had set up correctly. That if a mistake wasn't made, there's a chance it could have gone a different direction. I don't love this. I'm not a fan of it, but it doesn't enrage me. It doesn't anger me. I think the thing that people get a little bit frustrated with, Greg, is that they believe or they have seen, I haven't paid close enough attention to it, a track record of what they deem as excuse making by Coach Freeze. And so therefore they're just kind of over it and they don't like it. It's not something that I feel like is overly necessary. I do feel like that it comes across as excuse making, but I think it's also just it's him being honest with what he saw and how he feels like his team was set up. Now, then we can take that into the whole, throwing players under the bus and not necessarily taking responsibility, which I feel like if people listened to the entire press conference the other night after the game, would have probably viewed it a little bit of a different way, but not a lot of people want to do that. Also think that this is just a little bit of low-hanging fruit right now. Like it's people want to go after him, and people have been waiting for an opportunity, and now they've got it. And so they're going to take that chance, and they're going to go in because they know other people are going to like it, and people are going to think that they're cool when they either make fun of it or talk about how dumb it is or talk about how stupid it is and talk about how ridiculous it is. So it doesn't – I'm not mad about it. I just don't care, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I think the head coach, everything falls under your umbrella. We said this about coaches that get in trouble. We said this about coaches that have a guy do something that they shouldn't do. A position coach goes rogue, whatever it is. That's your team. That's your building. You're responsible for it. You just are. And I guess the only part that would sort of really frustrate me, Greg, would be, and this is, I guess, kind of the offensive lineman aspect of it. Like I'm just always a fan of just taking responsibility. And I just don't think that it ever hurts to just say, hey, this is on me. We're going to be better. And I do think it could have been worded a little bit differently, but I also think that that's just kind of him. Like that's how he addresses things, talks about things. So I don't know. Folks can let us know how mad they are about it. John, how did you see it? When you heard Coach Freeze say what he said last night on Tiger Talk, what was your reaction to it?
My first thought was, I guess, maybe how everyone else is feeling. It was one of those, like, are you sure you want to be saying that out loud? But then, like Greg said, I realized whom he's saying it to. He's saying it to not only the most hardcore, the fans, but he's really kind of relaying this to his team as well. Not unlike Nick Saban's comments about Texas A&M and buying players. He wasn't saying that on the national stage at game day. He was saying that at a paid speaking function. So he was choosing or wanting to say something that he knew would make those listening, happy about it. And I do think he's right in that if we play them again, we probably win those 9 times, because if we play up to how we should have played, and like Andy said, not having those turnovers, then yeah, we're definitely going to win those games, because without those turnovers and without a dumb play or two, yeah, they definitely win that game. The problem is they had those dumb plays and they had those turnovers, and there's no guarantee that you play them 9 more times that's not going to happen.
That's what I don't like about it, is because you turn it over 5 times, Greg. You say, if we played them 9 more times, we win. What if you turn it over 8 times or 10 times or 7 times? Because you can't sit here and tell me that that's not possible or feasible. You've proven that you are going to give the ball away, and you're going to give the ball away at critical points in time, and you're going to put yourself in a bad situation by turning it over early. So that's the part that I think if it would have been directed in a little bit of a different way of, hey, now we know what we've done wrong. We're not going to do that again. So we feel like if we had a similar matchup moving forward, we're going to be victorious next time. I feel like that's all I had to do is be worded that way. But again, people want to get mad about it. And I understand some of the stuff from the past that people are looking for reasons to be mad, and people look at a lot of it as excuse making. Again, I don't have that track record. I'm not keeping score. Mainly because I don't give a damn about that part of it. I just don't care. I understand a lot of you do. And if you want to share that with us, you can. 800-239-9569, or you can text into the show. If you want, you can tweet into the show, @MacandCube. A lot of different ways to be a part of it. But it's just not something that I feel like Greg was. Does it make you view him or this team any different based on the demeanor that you've seen after the game Saturday or last night on Tiger Talk?
No, I don't view them any different. God's honest truth, like, I'm far more mad about the handling and caving to the pressure of the quarterback's change than I am about a press conference or a Tiger Talk event where everybody that's listening is a diehard Auburn fan. Like, I mean, you're placating to your audience. Like, it's simple as that. Like, to me, I don't put any stock into it whatsoever. Like John said, it's not that dissimilar to when Nick Saban said A&M's doing this in a safe and confined space in an effort to rally his own fan base to make more donations to NIL. I mean, it's no different. It's the same thing. Like, it's a safe place. But the second it gets out of that safe place, people are going to run with it. Like, it didn't bother me. Now, you want me to? I'll be critical of Hugh Freeze, but I can promise you it's not going to be about something he said in a very controlled, confined environment. I'm going to be mad at him for switching the quarterback because he didn't need to, and he even watched the tape himself. And all of a sudden, now it's all be about the 9 plays that he watched with this guy, and, this guy had all the answers. Like, all right, great, cool. Let's just do a multiple choice test next time to figure out who our starting quarterback's going to be. Like, to me, that is what makes me mad about what's happened this year. I could care less about what he said after the fact. So I don't know why people are so mad about it. I don't think it's that big a deal. If you're Arkansas, laugh all the way to the win column, baby. Like, you won the game on the road. Like, who cares? And if you're anyone else, any other fan base, like, it doesn't involve your team, doesn't matter. So I don't know. I just don't know why people are as mad as they are about it. And like you said, if you got a problem with Hugh personally, that's your choice. I choose to evaluate his team and where he's at right now. Anything that happened in his past life doesn't really matter to me, at least at this point when I evaluate who he is and who his team is.
All right, we'll continue the conversation. I know some folks want to get in. We'll hear the rest of the group and their thoughts on it next, right here on McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. We'll continue that Hugh Freeze conversation in our next segment. Brett McMurphy going to stop by and hang out with us to talk some realignment here in just a moment. Before we get to Brett, GMAC, tell our listeners what BJI can do for them around their homes.
Well, they've been serving Alabama and customers across our community for 60 years. They've done an amazing job of making sure that your basement is dry, your crawl space is dry. So go down and check it out and just make sure. Hey, we've had some wet weather. We've got more wet weather coming this week potentially. So go and check out and make sure everything's up to speed with BDry. They're also going to back it up with a life structure warranty, and they're going to back it up for the rest of that structure's lifetime, and you're going to get 12 months interest-free. That's right, interest-free, no payments for 12 months. So go check them out, BeDryAlabama.com. You can also go online at you can also give them a call at 942-1976. It's 942-1976. It's BeDryAlabama.com. Get the job done right with the best possible warranty and the best price. It's BeDry Alabama.
All right, let's go to the Buyers Right Hotline. Brett McMurphy joining us. And don't always like diving into this during the season because we have actual football to talk about. But the realignment talk has kind of moved to the front of the table for a lot of people. McMurphy, you can follow him on Twitter at Brett_McMurphy. He's with the Action Network. All right, Brett. So yesterday we hear rumblings of certain teams looking like they may be heading to the Pac-12. That was actually the end of last week. And then yesterday, a lot of teams from the American come out and publicly say, no, we're sticking here. We're not going to go anywhere. Give us the latest of kind of where we are right now with some of those teams that looked like they may be headed towards the Pac-12 and now might not be headed towards the Pac-12.
Yeah, Cole, it was pretty hectic. Everybody kind of saw conference realignment played out in real time yesterday. The Pac-12 made offers to Memphis, USF, Tulane, and UTSA. They all decided to remain with the American. So with those guys out of the picture, the Pac-12 then reached out to some more schools from the Mountain West. Well, it appeared like they were not going to be successful. The Mountain West schools had rallied together and signed a MOU to stay, to recommit to the Mountain West, but that was dependent on the 8 remaining schools all remaining. Well, Utah State never signed it. So Utah State decided they would take an invite to go to the Pac-12. So now the document that they had all agreed on was not valid. Also, UNLV, which had agreed to stay in the Mountain West, once their donors found out about that, they were not happy. And so they decided they would reconsider. And so UNLV is going to decide probably as soon as today whether to stay in the Mountain West. And, you know, they would have to add another school because both right now the Pac-12 and the Mountain West are both at 7 football schools. You need to get to one more to get to 8 to stay in FBS conference. Or if they're going to go to the Pac-12, if UNLV goes to the Pac-12, they have their 8 football members that are required. And then the Mountain West is down to 6. And then if that happens, if you're still following along, look for Air Force to go to the American. The American's been interested in Air Force to pair them up with Army and Navy in the same conference. Air Force was prepared to stay in the Mountain West, but if there's, you know, if you've already lost 4 schools, the initial 4 that went to Pac-12, and now you lose Utah State and UNLV, now you're down to 6. So you would have to bring in 2 new members. So is it better to stay in the Mountain West if you're Air Force with 2 new members? Who knows who that would be? Or go join Army and Navy in the American. So that's kind of where we're at. But of course, it may be happening as we're talking right now.
So help me understand this. I mean, in my finances, these are rudimentary, but help me out. I believe the Mountain West is like $5 million a school per year. I think the American's like $8 million a school per year. And the Pac-12, right now we don't know what it is, but the estimates are like 12 to 15 million per school. One, how the heck is the Pac-12 going to get 12 to 15 million per school when they are basically the same, not that dissimilar to the Mountain West, which was currently getting 5 million per school? I don't understand why people would leave what is a decent situation like the American to go to the Pac-12 when I don't think the Pac-12 has anywhere near as much leverage as they think they do.
You're a genius, Mr. McElroy, because you're absolutely right. And that's why the schools did not leave the American. The Navigate, which is doing the projections, the media consulting for the Pac-12, was estimating that the media rights deal would be in the 12 to high end 15 million. That's not a legitimate offer. That's just their projection. So it's basically, it's worthless. It's not worth anything. And so the American schools basically.
Do you think that
just
you've been around this game for a long time? Like, do you actually think that because Washington State and Oregon State, you take them with a bunch of Mountain West schools who we've already previously realized that the market realizes that they're worth $5 million each. Then you take 2 Power 5 schools, which aren't necessarily needle movers, and all of a sudden it triples the value to each school? Like, it doesn't make sense. Do you think 12 to 15 is anywhere near what they're actually going to get?
No, you're absolutely right. They're not going to. The problem for the Pac-12 is they had their TV consultant telling all the members and the future members that they were going to get this higher number because they were taking the elite of the Mountain West plus the leftover Pac-12, which the American, pushed back on that. And, there was no concrete, this is how much you're going to make. It was all projected. It's like you going to take another job and not having an offer in writing saying, well, we could get to this, we may not, instead of you going to another job and saying, this is exactly what you're going to get. And Greg, you're absolutely right. And that's why this thing has been so confusing. And now you've got, look, if the Mountain West stays together, and at this point, it's a coin flip if they do or not, the league could dissolve. But if it does stay together, the Pac-12, the schools that went to the Pac-12 are going to owe over $150 million to the Mountain West because of exit fees and agreements they signed when they did the scheduling agreement with Oregon State and Washington State. Now, you can owe that to one thing is, as we've seen multiple times in college athletics, there will certainly be lawsuits and trying to settle and knock that number down. But yeah, why would you leave the Mountain West to join Oregon State and Washington State in a new conference and then end up paying over $150 million as a group? I don't understand that. Everyone's chasing, the carrot at the end of the stick for more money. The problem is regarding the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, which you laid out perfectly, there isn't more money. There's no non-power school out there that adds significant TV value to any league. You can name any of the leagues not in a power league. So you're basically just shuffling. You're moving from your house to your neighbor's house. It's a lateral move at best, except now you got to travel more and other expenses.
Is Memphis the most valuable school out there of kind of this group of teams that we've talked about, either going to the Pac-12, maybe leaving the Mountain West, staying in the American, of this kind of grouping? Are they the most valuable entity out there?
I mean, they are cold, but they're not. It's not. Again, it's minuscule. We're not talking about Texas going to the SEC. Where that's sure. A huge revenue boost. It's even on the group of 5 level. It's very minor, if any, that there is a difference in Memphis joining your conference. Memphis had an offer to join the Pac-12 as a football only member, and they would put their basketball program in the Big East. So they were looking at a lot of different things, but Memphis was the linchpin to be able to get Tulane and USF, because Tulane and USF were not going to the Pac-12 without Memphis. And so that's why Memphis was so key. So they were valuable in that way, Cole, but not financially. It's not like, oh, you had Memphis and suddenly your media rights deal is worth much more. No, it's still the same amount of money.
So who is the most valuable still out there? I mean, I think for a while it was SMU. I think that now
there isn't anybody.
So there's not a single one where it's like, all right, that one's a no-brainer.
Well, a conference may think that based on their success as a football program or different things like that. But as far as financially, like it's a no-brainer financially bringing in school X. Greg, there's nobody out there. That's why, and look, I'm not slamming all these schools. I'm being honest. I'm answering your question. That's why they're not in power leagues right now. They're not worth more than anybody in a power league, and pretty much everybody is worth the same in the group of 5. Now you could argue some are worth a little bit more, but again, we're only talking about $1 million a year, maybe 1.5 million, whatever it is. So is it worth blowing up an entire conference to add a certain school? The only reason the Pac-12 and Mountain West are going through all this stuff is because the Pac-12 was gutted by Big Ten, Big 12, ACC, and they're having to rebuild to survive. So it's, again, going back to what you said earlier, Greg, it's not like you're going to make more money. It's more about, we just need to survive as a conference. We need to get up to 8 members.
Brett, great stuff. Appreciate the time. There's a lot happening. Wanted you to offer just a little bit more clarity to it as to where some schools might be headed, who's not heading out, who's staying. We appreciate you hopping on and kind of straightening out a little bit for us, and I look forward to having you back soon.
Hey, you got it. If you're not against a hard break, trivia question. Last time Alabama was a home underdog?
Was it
2007,
Georgia?
2007
Matt
LSU.
Stafford? No?
2007, Greg McElroy, just a young puppy-faced freshman. Alabama home underdog to LSU. Greg, you remember it well. All right.
He's the brains of the operation. So
I don't know about that. I just remember that game vividly because we had it. We actually played pretty well, and we fumbled it deep in our own end, and that gave them the game winner. So bummer, but it's all good.
Yeah,
you never forget the ones you lose. You always forget the wins. You never forget the losses. That's for sure.
Yeah. The great Matt Flynn for the LSU Tigers.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. Brett, great stuff. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. You got it. Yep.
You think if you guys played them 9 more times, you win all those?
They were the national champs, so no. We were a jump start in Saban's first year. Like, we might have beaten them twice out of 10.
There you go. All right. Great stuff from McMurphy. Appreciate him stopping by. We'll continue the conversation next right here on Jocks 94.5.
Welcome back, McElroy Kubelik in the morning. Jocks 94.5. 8:49 here in Birmingham, Alabama. Time to get to one of the best segments of the week. It's time to get about it.
About it.
I didn't know if there was another about it in there.
I took
thought
it
there
off.
was
I
one
felt
more.
like it went a
So,
little
okay.
long. Yeah.
You took
yeah.
it off? You felt like it was just too much?
Yeah.
Too much buildup?
You can get a little too about it, as obviously
Yeah.
Nick Saban did in that intro.
On occasion, you can. Yeah. And
Correct.
when you hear some of the stat lines, you have a tendency to press the button like 6 or 7 more times.
Correct, right,
About
yeah.
it.
Like a helicopter.
But
But
about
deservedly
it?
so.
Exactly. The one really segment of the week where we really highlight individual performance. We will always give credit where credit is due, but this is one in which great individual performances are celebrated. I like to go a little off the radar more often than not, and this week's no different. I am going to Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Okay.
And no, it's not the Buffalo Sabres or the Bills.
Oh,
or
not Josh Allen. Okay. All right.
No. Josh Allen definitely bowed it last night, though. Can confirm. I am going with Sean Dolak. Anybody familiar with his work?
Not familiar with your game, buddy.
I don't think so, Tim.
Dude's a beast. Anyways, I'm listening on the drive home, and NIU is about to be upset by Buffalo. I'm listening on the drive home from Clemson, and they keep playing the Buffalo game. I'm like, oh God, like I don't want to listen to this. Like put on, every other game that matters. Like I don't care. Long story short, I'm glad I did because I continued to hear Sean Dolak. So I decided to look up his numbers after the game, decided to peep the tape. Dude was absolutely everywhere. Okay. They beat the 23rd ranked Northern Illinois. He had 19 tackles, 4.5 tackles for a loss,
Sweet Jesus.
a PBU, and an interception that put his offense inside the 5-yard line as he almost went back and scored. He had a 53-yard return on that interception. And so that interception set up the go-ahead score. He currently leads the nation in 62 tackles. He has 9.5 tackles for a loss. And he has helped bring in Buffalo to a 3-1 record. And it's the second time he's been named MAC Defensive Player of the Week. So Sean Dolak was
About it.
You bet he was. Well, G-Mac, as you go on the defensive side of the ball, I am going to the offense. And when I tell you this, just hear me out when you hear this name. How about Navy? Yes, the Navy. Their quarterback, Blake Horvath, 9 for 12, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're thinking, that's pretty good. Well, let me tell you, he added a little bit more fuel to the fire with his legs because he went for 12 carries, 211 yards, and 4 touchdowns, big dog. Have yourself a day in a 56-44 win over the Memphis Tigers. Navy quarterback Blake Horvath, he was.
About it.
You bet he was.
I could.
How about scoring 56 on Memphis when the week before Florida State couldn't
Florida
do
State
anything?
couldn't do
Yeah,
nothing.
oof.
I mean, what are we doing? What is up with the college football world right now?
I could, in back-to-back weeks, stay in state and go Devontae Ross because he put up 11 catches, 229 yards, 3 touchdowns against FAMU. It was in the win. I could do that,
Have yourself a day, brother.
but I'm not going to because I've got to go of everyone's darling right now. I've got to go to James Madison and their quarterback, Alonzo Barrett, not the first, not the second, but the third, because
LB3, baby.
for 22 of 34, that's a pretty dang good day. All that with 388 yards.
Whew.
That's phenomenal. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 passing touchdowns. Al Bundy couldn't even do that. He only got 4 in the game. This guy got 5. And quite
Al
possibly
Bundy was a running back.
still, he only got 4 in the game. This is a quarterback, and we know we care about quarterbacks more. But Alonzo Barrett the third, with America's darling right now until they probably lose in a week or two because, that's how the G5 does. They go and have these great upsets looking at you, Northern Illinois, and then mess around and, stumble. But for right now, I got to give it to all of JNU, but also their quarterback because they were.
About it.
You bet they were.
A couple more just to give out a little love. Josiah Stewart. If you are unfamiliar with that name,
Jay Stu?
he was the guy. I'm sorry?
You said Jay Stu?
No, I'm not sure if you know him. Yeah, I'm not sure you guys are boys like that.
Probably
That's
not.
cool. Yeah, that's cool. Like if you're trying to claim him, that's fine. I would after this past performance. But for those that have, you've seen him play, he was the guy that destroyed the right side of the offensive line in the Rose Bowl on 4th and 3. Yes, he's back, and he had a couple sacks in the game, and he made Miller Moss's life really miserable. So I think he certainly deserves
About it.
Yeah, a couple sacks, and that guy was just relentless, man. I mean, he lived in the backfield. Also want to give a little pressure to little love to David Bailey, linebacker from Stanford. That's right, Stanford, who on Friday night went on the road to Central New York and took care of the previously undefeated Qs. This guy applied pressure. He read 16 pass rush opportunities, and he applied pressure on 5 of them. That's a 31% pressure rate, which led college football last week by more than 10 points. So
Yeah,
he was all over the place. I'm like, who is this guy? And he kept blitzing and blitzing and blitzing. He was dang good. So I want to give some credit there as well. And there was a bunch of really impressive performances offensively this past weekend. It's almost hard to limit it just to 1 or 2. But one that kind of stood out to me was Devontae Ross. I would give it to him, but I'm going to go in a different direction. Jack Besh at TCU, formerly of LSU. Couple touchdowns. Got it going against SMU. He made a couple of ridiculously good plays. Trey Harris at Ole Miss went for 225
Yes, sir.
in the game this past weekend. A couple open looks as well. So just giving a little love to the wide receiver spot because there were some good plays being made on the perimeter as well. All right, when we come back, we're going to go outside the SEC footprint, dive into a couple of key storylines as we move forward on Mac and Cube. Welcome back, Mac Cube, top of the 9 o'clock hour. Roddy Nabulsi coming up here in 30 minutes. The show so far has been pretty good. Did some OU with Chris Plank. That was at 7:30. They're making a quarterback change. And I'll tell you why in a moment, why I think that actually is the right move. Andy Burcham joined us at the 8 o'clock hour. Top of the 8 o'clock hour, helped us break down a little bit where Auburn's going from this point forward. If you missed any of the show, you can always check it out on the podcast. We had Brett McMurphy to help put a little bit of perspective into the realignment stuff that's going on right now. You guys know it's season time. We don't love doing realignment. Why would you? I only like realignment when it involves like teams. If you're smaller than like the Texas Longhorns, I just don't care. You know what I mean? Like if you're small, like just tell me where you're going. It's fine. Like this whole like, oh, you know what? We're going to leave this one for this one. And it's, you know, it's going to cost $77,000 for you to move from this conference to this conference. Like, that's fine. Just tell me where it is. I can't keep up with it. Like I forgot that Utah State was in the Mountain West. Like, I mean, Damian, I know you're not like super dialed in on the realignment stuff. We all probably could be better at it, but do you actually care? I mean, seriously, like the Pac-12 right now, I just don't care that much. I'm trying to. I think it's good to care, but I just don't. How do y'all feel?
Nah, I mean, once they made the move to the CW, it kind of went by the wayside. And when you only have 2 teams represented out of, you know, the 12 that you did have, nah, it doesn't really affect me too much.
I wonder if some of that stems from the fact that you're not getting what you're losing.
Right.
Like the Big 12, okay, they lost Texas and Oklahoma, and now they brought in a fair amount of number of schools, and maybe if you add up the schools that they got, they may, in totality, equal Texas and Oklahoma. But for the most part, with the exception really of the SEC, everyone's that has realigned, I don't want to say they've gotten worse, but they haven't replaced what was lost.
Right.
And maybe that's why it's like, okay, that's great that Utah State's moving to the Pac-12. I remember when the Pac-12 was out here fighting for championships, and now Utah State is in the Pac-12. It's just like, okay, fine, sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just take a G5 program, to me, put a Pac-12 logo on their jersey, and all of a sudden you tell me that you're a P5 program.
Right.
It doesn't happen that way. Like, that's fine. I'm having a tough time still with the SMU to the ACC. I mean, my whole life living in Dallas, Fort Worth, well, my whole adolescent years and beyond living in Dallas, Fort Worth, like I never associated SMU with Power 5 football.
Same with TCU.
Then again, I never TCU neither, because they were a Mountain West team my whole life. Mm-hmm. But it's taken time, and now I'm fine with it. Right? I think SMU will be the same thing. Like SMU does have some legitimate skins on the wall from back in the day. Now, did they come by them honestly? No. Do I care? Not really. I mean, so I think that in time, maybe I'll view Utah State as a Pac-12 Power 4, Power 5 level team. I just don't have that opinion right now. So just tell me where you end up. We'll follow you. Like, we'll watch your tape. I know the Joe Moore Award Committee will definitely watch your tape. I don't know if I will. Can't confirm.
We as a show will watch the tape.
Yes,
that's all that matters.
We do have somebody that is associated with this show. His name is in the show that will watch you. I'm not sure if any of us 3 are going to spend time doing it, unless you have a quarterback like Jordan Love. In which case, yeah, I'll watch it.
Right, we may dial in.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, do you know that Kennesaw State is now FBS?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, like, we know that, but it still is like, what? Like,
No, I don't think I knew that, though, until week 2 this year, and they were picked on game day as like a super dog. So, yes.
Flipping through Phil Steele's guide, writing down the scores, I was like, oh, this is happening. Oh, okay. Whoops. Guess I missed that.
There you go. All right. Moving nationally, though, to some performances. And I don't like to spend a lot of time on the AP poll. I don't know about you guys. Like the AP poll is what you want to make of it. Like I was listening to Joel Klatt's podcast the other day, and I like Joel. I do. I think he's a Big Ten homer a little bit, but that's okay. Like I'm kind of an SEC homer, not intentionally. I just know those programs better. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sitting there like outwardly banging the drum on the SEC. but I've grown up in the SEC. Like, I just know them like the back of my hand. So I'm more comfortable talking about South Carolina than I am talking about Indiana. That's just me. So Joel Klatt, I'm listening to his pod last Thursday or so, and he's just absolutely eviscerating the AP poll. I'm like, dude, why do you care? Like, it doesn't matter. Okay, I understand, like, if you are maybe have a slight lean towards the ACC, or if you work at Fox, there is one team that's currently in the top 7 that is on your air. Like, one. That's Ohio State.
Yeah.
And they were on Big Noon Fox last week.
And played Marshall.
Can confirm.
Yeah.
Marshall. Okay, so like I can understand maybe trying to discredit the AP poll because only one team that you own the rights to is in the top 7. But I just don't put a lot of stock into it. But here's where I have a bit of an issue. Now, you guys know I picked Ohio State to win the national championship this year. Okay? I love Ohio State this year. I think their talent is outrageous. But as of this moment, how can you in good conscience put Ohio State and Ole Miss in the top 5 or 6?
Maybe by default.
Because of your preseason expectations? How can you in good conscience have Oregon in your top 8? Like, I'm just being honest here. Like, and frankly, like, there's a bunch of teams that I would have lower than they currently are. I would not have Missouri in the top 10. The AP poll doesn't either, but I wouldn't have them in the top 10 based on how they've looked. You think Missouri looked good against Vandy? You think Missouri looked good against Boston College? I'm talking 60 minutes of action where they played really well. How can you answer yes to that? You can't. Now, I'll tell you who I think would maybe garner some attention that would have been down the list for me that now I'd probably have as a top 12 school. That'd be BYU. I am super impressed with BYU, but we don't adjust based on what we've seen. It's like, oh, well, BYU finally won a good game. Just move them up a little bit, just a little bit. Put them in the top 25, but don't put them in the top 20. Can't do that. Can't overreact too much. What have you seen from Oklahoma that warrants being ranked?
No. Nope.
Right? Was it their close win against Houston? Was it their second half performance against Tulane where they let Tulane like climb back into the game? Or was it the fact that they lost by 10 last week, but it felt like 100?
Yep.
So my problem with the AP poll is not that it exists, because I take it with a grain of salt. I think it creates some intrigue. When I turn on the TV this weekend and I see number 2 at number 4 when Georgia travels to Alabama, that's going to do something for me. As a casual fan, that matters. It creates conversation, it creates intrigue, and it creates momentum. But we have to be willing to adjust. And frankly, at this moment, Ohio State and Ole Miss haven't played anybody. Doesn't mean I don't think they're really good. Doesn't mean they don't have a crazy high ceiling. Doesn't mean I wouldn't pick them against teams that might be ranked in front of them, but they haven't proven it yet. They haven't proven it yet. And it's hard for me to look at the fact that we're in week 5 and the best team you played is the 68th best team in America in Wake Forest. And that's generous. It might be 78th. Okay, I don't know. But Damian, when we look at the AP poll, you know what it should look like?
What should it look like?
Well, just you tell me where I'm absolutely. You just
No, I don't
play
think
the
that
buzzer.
I don't think you're necessarily
Rip the
wrong
buzzer
because
here.
How do you knock down Missouri 4 spots after they actually won the ball game? Now, granted, it's
Because they didn't look very good in the process.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, maybe you shouldn't have had them that high to begin with. Because I've been like you the past couple, going into the offseason and coming into the season, that I wasn't really high on Mizzou. But I mean, yeah, Miami looks better after what they've been able to do. I mean, you could argue Oregon, but it's not like Oregon's been head and shoulders better than their competition. I mean, Penn State was in a dogfight with Bowling Green not too long ago. So I just think that in the AP poll, especially this early on, it doesn't really serve too much, but also it kind of gives you a game plan. And maybe we start to have the conversations like we have over the years past of let's not even rank these things until the first month is over. And then we can kind of assess where teams are from that point forward.
I think that's perfectly fine. Like, I got no problem having rankings, but we got to be willing to adjust and adapt based on poor performance. All right. So let's go through it. Here's what it should be. All right. You guys tell me, like, play the when you disagree. Okay. I don't care. Texas is number 1. Do we have any issues with that?
Not at all.
Right.
No.
Like, went on the road right now in college football. The highest ranked 1-loss team is Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So Texas, to me, has the best win. They went on the road and beat the highest ranked 1-loss team. That's a pretty good starting point, no? Okay, let's go next to who should be ranked number 2. To me, the second best team I've seen this year is Tennessee. And now I'm okay if Georgia's at 2 because I think Georgia's win over Clemson is going to look better and better and better. So if you want to have, Georgia 2 or Tennessee 3, vice versa, I really don't have. I feel like we're kind of splitting hairs there because both teams have at times looked dominant against quality competition, and both teams have a good win at their disposal. Now, you could say, well, the Oklahoma win's not a good win. I think in time, that defense is still going to win Oklahoma a lot of games.
Yep.
I'm not saying they're a playoff contender this year. I don't believe that to be true. But I do think that this Oklahoma team is probably still a 7 or 8 win team just because of how good they are on defense.
Yeah,
And
I agree with you on that one. And especially when it comes to Tennessee, it's, of course, the first couple of games, just the quality of competition that you played. You went out there and handled your business. You're scoring 1,000 points. But when you kind of dial it back, and even, like you said, Oklahoma's defense is good. Like, they are a good defense.
Heck yeah.
And your defense, Tennessee's defense, has shown that, okay, well, we're pretty good ourselves. It's no longer the bend but don't break. It's, no, we're good enough to beat you defensively, where even if our offense isn't clicking at all cylinders, we're still a dominant football team.
Agree with that completely. Saber, are you good with Tennessee being 2 in front of Georgia? Or would you have Georgia in front of Tennessee at the moment?
No, I think you are splitting hairs. I would give it to Tennessee because I've seen them play better competition on the field. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt right now.
Yeah, so I originally had Georgia at 2 because I think that win over Clemson might be better than the win against Oklahoma. But I do think it's close. So I'm going to go now, make a change. I'm going to go Tennessee 2, Georgia 3. After that is where it gets tricky because I think these next 2 teams are excellent. Excellent. But it's not their fault because the team that they've played against isn't very good. Like, I think Wisconsin is better than Florida. So I'm going to put Bama at 4, Miami at 5. And people will say, well, hang on a second. What about the South Florida game? They have a common opponent. To me, it's a little bit misleading because Bama was able to go into the South Florida game with a bit of an unknown, also a little banged up. I'm not saying making excuses. I just think South Florida wasn't going to sneak up on Miami because of what South Florida did the week before against Alabama. And Alabama beat them with one arm tied behind their back, knowing that they were without some of their best players offensively along the offensive line. Hey, guys playing out of position. So I take it with a grain. I also look at the fourth quarter, and I feel like it was a dominant performance there in the fourth quarter, which means when I'm splitting hairs between these 2 teams, I give Alabama an edge over Miami. But that's your top 5. That's your top 5. Why? Because they've looked good, and they also actually been challenged. Next up is a collection of teams that have yet to be challenged, and I'm still in wait and see mode. Like at 6, I'd go Ohio State because on paper, I think they're the best remaining. At 7, I'd probably go Ole Miss. At 8, I'd go Penn State because I do think Penn State, albeit their defensive performance against Bowling Green in the first half was terrible. That was clearly a sleepwalk performance. and they got things going in the second half. No?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fair.
I agree. That's fine.
We're good with those three in that order, correct?
Correct.
Next up is Utah. Utah should be next. Okay? Notice there's no Oregon here. Why? Because I don't think Oregon's looked very good. Okay, yes, they beat up on Oregon State. I don't think Oregon State's very good. Will Oregon ultimately be really good here in the weeks to come? I think so. I think they got talent. But they're, like most of these teams, wait and see mode. I think you can put a BYU in this conversation based on how they've played. Now, people don't want to pay attention to BYU, but they completely shut down SMU's offense, held them to 15 points on the road, and then a couple weeks later at home, they completely dismantled Kansas State.
Yeah.
Like, if you watch Kansas State in that game, that was an absolute beatdown.
Yes.
Like 100% beatdown. Now, they forced a bunch of turnovers and had a punt return to the house, but they won all three phases of that game against a team that I think is excellent. So, like, we should be adjusting as the season goes along.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know why we have such a hesitancy to do that in our sport. Like, we can give credit where credit is due and acknowledge that, hey, these teams, they haven't done anything yet. They'll earn it. They'll get there, and we'll seed them accordingly. But we can't do it just yet. So how would your top 10, are there any teams that you would put in the top 10, Damian, that aren't in the AP poll top 10 striking distance right now?
Not really. I mean, you can have, you brought up an interesting point with BYU, and I was hesitant because maybe, like, to me, if you were to play them head-to-head neutral site, you're taking BYU or Mizzou.
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm taking BYU.
All right, BYU, Michigan.
Seriously, I know that's crazy, but, like, I think BYU, the way BYU plays on the line of scrimmage defensively is scary. Like, Tennessee-like, heavy-handed, strong, physical dudes that can anchor. They have some athleticism at the second level. Like, I think BYU's really good.
All right, so where would you, since you've seen them up close and personal, would you have them above Clemson?
Yes.
Okay.
So far,
right, and that's kind of what we're gauging on just so far. So you look at BYU at their peak, and granted, I know we've seen it now, Notre Dame, and I know you can't get that Northern Illinois loss out of your system, but head to head, if all things are equal, BYU or Notre Dame?
that's a tough one. Race to double digits. Whoever gets to double digits wins. I'd probably lean BYU, but it'd be close. Like, it'd be real close. Notre Dame, I think BYU's quarterback's pretty good. Now, I don't think he's like super elite, but I think he's pretty good. So Notre Dame, I think you have a good running option at quarterback, but I'm not convinced right now that they're going to create enough balance. I think BYU's got some weapons on them. I'm a big believer, and they might totally implode. That could absolutely happen. Because I think the Big 12, all the gaps between all the teams are really dang close at the moment. So BYU might not be around as the game goes along, but it wouldn't shock me if BYU comes out and loses this week to Baylor. It wouldn't. I know it sounds crazy. I think it could absolutely happen, but it also wouldn't shock me if they were 11-1 in the Big 12. That's how the margins are in that league, I think. So it's tough, man. Like, it's really, really tough. Baylor's actually a comfortable favorite this weekend, I might add. A 3.5 point favorite right now at home.
Oh boy.
Against BYU.
Oh boy.
So, and when you have a team that just lost on a Hail Mary and their coach is on the hot seat, I bet you get the best version of Baylor this week. Just saying. But all right, let's wrap this up. Good conversation. I just think the AP poll takes a lot of flack, but you take it with a grain of salt, man. Let's make adjustments on the fly, and let's continue to evaluate these teams as we move forward. We're finally going to get some tests. Like Ohio State, all right, how big of a test? I don't know, but it's a bigger test than they've had up to this point. They finally open up conference play, so we'll get a good assessment when they go on the road to take on Sparty and Michigan State. We also are going to finally see we're also going to finally see Ole Miss. They're at home against Kentucky. We all know what Kentucky's capable of, especially on the defensive side. So we're going to learn a lot about these teams here this weekend when they tee it up. We also don't need to learn a whole lot about what Bill Smith needs to do because you already know that they're the GMC Dealer of the Year, the very best in the business. Don't take my word for it. Take General Motors' word for it. They're the ones that gave Bill Smith the GMC Dealer of the Year 7 times. The 7-time national champ. You won't find anyone else that's won that award as many times as they have because you won't find deals anywhere else like Bill Smith has. A GMC Sierra 1500 SLT 4x4 with the X31 off-road package. It's a loaded vehicle. $68,000 is the list price. You can get it for just over $55,000. That's more than $12,500 off the sticker price. It's a deal like that that'll keep you coming back. That's why 75% of their business is repeat customers because you have a better experience when you shop with Bill Smith. So take the short drive up to Coleman. You'd be glad you did. You can also shop online, have it delivered right to your driveway at BillSmithBuickGMC.com. Bill Smith Buick GMC. We are professional grade. All right, when we come back, continue on. There's a team right now that's just flying under the radar, and it's not BYU. We just did enough on BYU. Goodness gracious. There's a team right now that's flying under the radar, though, and you don't want to mess around with this team because if you have them on their schedule, and by the way, a lot of teams that are listening to us right now do have them on the schedule. They're in the SEC that you do not want to mess with, and I'll explain why next on McElroy and Cubic in the Morning on Jock 74.5. Welcome back to McElroy Cubic in the morning. Jock 94.5. Our friends at Wayne's continue to blow me away, man. Walked outside last night, playing with the boys outside. We're been really big right now on riding bikes. But I'm just sitting out there in the lawn, man. The lawn is lush. It's nice. I can be out there barefoot without any issues. I'm not itchy when I walk on the lawn, man. It's really been great. Thanks to my friends at Wayne's. And right now is the time. It's a critical season to be preparing your lawn for a healthy spring in 25. They can treat and prepare it for the cold season ahead with the correct nutrients and the pre-emergent that gets set in the lawn before the dormant season. So now is actually a really important time to get out in front if you want your yard to pop next spring and summer. If you sign up now for the lawn service, you'll receive the first month absolutely free. So call and use the offer code JOCKS. That's offer code JOCKS, J-O-X, at 866-WAYNES1. Visit callwaynes.com. That's callwaynes.com. Offer code JOCKS for the first month of the EnviroLawn absolutely free. So check them out and let Wayne's continue to create your happy place. I'll tell you a team, guys, and I don't know how much they're sneaking up on folks. I would like to know y'all's perception. But the more I watch Kentucky, the more I feel like that's not a team I want to mess around with. Like, I'm calling their game this weekend, and while, yes, I think it's much more manageable to play them at home than it is in Lexington. And we all found out a couple weeks ago just how capable they were against Georgia. And people, I think, have pointed to Georgia and say, well, Georgia's flawed. Y'all, going back and watching that game, Kentucky created a lot of problems for Georgia. Like, that wasn't just Georgia having a bad night. Like, Kentucky kind of was the aggressor in that game in some ways. So I'm curious. We'll start with you, Damian. When you think Kentucky this year, what is your perception?
It's kind of flawed because I watched the South Carolina game, and anything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
Right.
And then you watch Georgia, and it's okay. If their offense was more consistent, they really could have beaten Georgia. And you don't really take too much from Southern Miss and Ohio. Kentucky is a work in progress, and I still don't. I'm not ready to say that offensively you're wasting a lot of talent out there at receiver, because Brock Vandagriff, to me, is just not that guy. But also, he doesn't have to be, because their defense can make the plays. And I don't know. It's when I look at the rest of their schedule, like, I don't think they're going to beat Ole Miss. I think they could give Ole Miss some problems, but are they better than Vanderbilt? Because Vanderbilt has shown like they can keep it, above with a lot of these teams. I think they beat Florida, but it's still a toss-up to me with Auburn. I don't think they beat Tennessee. Yeah, they got Murray State. They're going to lose to Texas, and I don't know if they're going to beat Louisville. It's just I don't know where Kentucky is right now, because they're not the worst. They're not the best. They're just fighting just finding their way within the middle of the pack. And I don't think they ever escape the middle of the pack.
I think that's fair. The other thing that is pretty remarkable about Kentucky, though, and I actually would slightly disagree with you on Brock Vandagriff. Like, I'm starting to become a little more bullish on him. I don't think he's going to necessarily morph into, the second coming of Jalen Milroe, or, I don't think he's like a top 10 pick. But I think he's going to ultimately end up being a really solid college quarterback. Like, who he reminds me of? Sam Ehlinger. Like, Sam Ehlinger, solid, right? Just a solid player. Not a freak, but just solid and productive. And that's kind of what I see when I evaluate Brock Vandagriff. So I think it's in there. I think the receivers are a little bit inconsistent, but they have talent. I think they trust Dane Key a lot, so that's helpful. But they're not even going at full strength right now. Like, when they get their running back, like Dummy Sumo Karngbe has been solid at running back, but he's supposed to be their secondary guy. Chip Trainum is supposed to be their primary guy. He's the transfer from Ohio State. If they can start to add home run hitting potential at running back, and Trainum's due back maybe as soon as this week, then look out. Because I think this team's excellent on the defensive line, and their secondary is really good. I love what they've now added with Dumas Johnson at second level linebacker. And I think their offensive line's a group that will hopefully get better as the season goes along. But athleticism is what's going to hurt that group. They're not super athletic. And that's why South Carolina was a bad matchup. So, John, when you look at Kentucky, what are your thoughts?
To me, they've, especially under Stoops, they've always been a team that you cannot afford to overlook. Yeah, they'll probably mess around and look stupid and lose to, like they did against South Carolina. But then they'll mess around. They haven't gotten Georgia yet, but they will be toe-to-toe with Georgia in a competitive way to where, oh, yeah, they can beat you. They will find a way to get Tennessee. They're basically what South Carolina was on those 2 games against Clemson and Tennessee a couple of years or so ago. They play to that level for the most part, but they're going to lay an egg too. Why that is, I don't know, but they are a team that, yes, you are right, that you have to take them seriously, because the one time you don't, that's when they'll come out and upset you and be like, well, what just happened? It was Kentucky. They haven't shown any kind of life. Well, it's always been there. Just for whatever reason, everyone overlooks them or forgets about them because Shane Beamer has their number.
Well, I think it's easy to draw conclusions on the South Carolina game for sure, and I think that's why a lot of people are down on them. That's why if I'm buying stock right now, I'm buying some stock in Kentucky. Look, they have an opportunity this weekend to go on the road at Ole Miss. All the pressure's on Ole Miss. Is Ole Miss' first challenge. I'm not saying they get the win. I'm saying that this will be a harder transition for Ole Miss than it is for Kentucky, because Kentucky's already seen Georgia. Kentucky's already seen South Carolina. Like, they've already been accustomed to the speed of the SEC, and it might take Ole Miss a quarter to get comfortable at 11 a.m. there against a team that is battle tested. They got Vandy at home. They're at Florida. They're at Auburn. I think they could easily win those 3 games. I actually would expect them to win those 3 games right now. At Tennessee, at Texas, extremely difficult games. Extremely difficult games. But we're talking about teams with playoff aspirations at that point. And maybe you catch Kentucky on a bad day and they go into your place, make it really uncomfortable. And as the favorite, I don't like being at home as much when you're trying to break through, because the second that the opposing team has momentum, next thing you know, it gets a little quiet in your own home field, and then it becomes real tough. They got Murray State, and then they got Louisville, who might also be a playoff contender at season's end. So I'm telling you, we might fast forward to the end of the year, and Kentucky's be sitting there at, 7-3 with some surprise, with maybe one surprising win, whether it's at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, or at Tennessee, and they match up well against Louisville. Don't be shocked if Kentucky by season's end sitting there as an 8-4 football team. Just telling you, you heard it here first. I am buying stock in the Wildcats right now. When we come back, Roddy Nabulsi will join us, talk a little Georgia Bulldogs next on Mac and Cube. Welcome back, McElroy Kubelik in the morning, Jocks 94.5. Tell you about my friends at Polar Bear Services. It's amazing. It really is. It's absolutely amazing just how many things they can do around your house. I'm just blown away by how I feel like I'm constantly getting great service, whether it's electrical, plumbing, heat, or air, from the guys at Polar Bear Services. Really appreciate Weston and the professionalism. Got a quote the other day about a whole home generator. They can do that. They specialize in the HVAC system. So you know you're going to make sure that your home comfort system is equipped and ready because of a checkup from Polar Bear Services. You'll be really happy you went with them. I know I have been. They've been a great partner, and look forward to many, many more years of outstanding service from Polar Bear Services. So go check them out right now. Remember, if you have a problem with your electrical, plumbing, heat, or air, just pick up the phone and call the Bear. It's 205-497-BEAR. That's 497-BEAR. All right, Roddy Nabulsi joins us now, and always appreciate Roddy's perspective. Does a great job covering Georgia. He's a publisher at UGAsports.com. Spent some time at ESPN. He's been all over the place. So, Roddy, we really appreciate it, my friend. How are we doing today?
Doing very good. Thank you guys for having me on. Very excited about this contest. Our readers are through the roof just waiting for it. So I'm happy to talk about it with you guys.
Can't imagine why. It's not a big Titanic battle whatsoever. And it's not one that we get very often in the regular season. So it's always a big deal. It's always fun. Looking forward to it. That's for sure. Let's start with the bye week. Coming off of the performance against Kentucky. I thought the Kentucky performance offensively was disappointing. I didn't think they had their best stuff. I think the offensive line struggled mightily in that game. And I'm trying to figure out, is that a sign of things to come, or is that a blip on the radar? And from your assessment, what do you think that Kentucky performance means?
It is somewhat of a sign of things to come because the perimeter blocking was also bad. You had a bubble screen and a tunnel screen. They're both missed. The key blocks missed by the tight ends, and that just shows, hey, you don't have Brock Bowers. You don't have Ladd McConkey bringing those explosives, which allows teams to kind of say, hey, we're just going to load up and stop the run. And let's give Kentucky a little bit of credit. Deion Walker's one of the best in the business. To me, that's the first round pick there. But again, he's one guy. But when you're starting left tackle, Ernest Green is supposed to be, also a first-round pick, and he's placed partway through the game. And they could say that it was a substitution, but he actually missed a block. You got to be concerned because Kirby went into, after the game, said, hey, we worked all week on perimeter blocking, and we just didn't get it done. So they did not block well, the offensive line nor the skill players. They also, a lot of people are giving the defensive pass, and look, Kentucky didn't score, but they moved between the 30s. Like it's nobody's business. They had drives of 13 plays, 11 plays, 10 plays, 9 plays, 8. There was only 1 3 and out until the very last possession. Also, very unusual for a Kirby Smart team. So that I think they could fix with some better tackling. A little more concerned about the offensive line and their blocking. But again, people want to talk about that game a lot, and we analyzed it 8 ways from Sunday when it comes at UGA Sports. But to me, it was very uncharacteristic of a Kirby Smart team because they were very heavily penalized. They had very bad tackling in the backfield. A lot of broken tackles, a lot of missed tackles. I think there were 16 according to PFF. 16 missed tackles is not a Kirby Smart thing. And then missed blocks. There were a lot of those. And those are things that can be fixed. But I'm sure that's what they worked on the entire off week. But at the same time, when Kirby after the game says, we worked on that, and then they didn't do it in the game, that rings an alarm bell for me.
Yeah, no, it's not. I would say, like you said, it's not something that isn't concerning, but I'm not going to press panic yet. You know what I mean? Like it's worth noting,
exactly.
But it's okay. You know what I mean? Like I am just God's honest truth. I am a little concerned though about the offensive line. And while you said, hey, Deion Walker is great, I agree. But when you have Monroe Freeling going in for Ernest Green, I don't know if that was because of injury or because Ernest Green was getting beat. That's concerning. He's not a guy. The left tackle is not a position I've been concerned about. You got Ratledge, who's out now. And your center, I think, has been good, but he's maybe not Cedric Van Pran, which is okay, but still something of note and something of concern. So Are you confident in Georgia being able to win the trench battle here offensively?
Oh, absolutely not. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but to your point, taking Tate Ratledge out, a preseason, I think maybe it was a unanimous All SEC pick from the coaches or the media. He's definitely the guy. And yeah, Cedric Van Pran's not there. Jared Wilson is going to play in the NFL. The center, he is phenomenal. He's one of the fastest offensive linemen.
He's athletic for sure. He's not as much of an anchor. Like they're more athletic, I think, really across the board, offensively and defensively, and that he's a good indicator of that. I think they're just a more athletic team, but I don't know if they're as just dense. Is that the right word? Like they're not as heavy as they seemingly were for many years under Kirby Smart.
Yeah, the physical, mean. You go back to Justin Schaefer, and Xavier Truss was about to get into a fight, so I was there at right tackle. But they're ridiculously talented, but I don't know that they have gelled as an offensive line yet. And yeah, thinking Jared Wilson had 2 bad snaps. That's just he's not a 3-year starter like Cedric Van Pran. So for all his athleticism, you can't have the ball coming back early, you can't have it coming back low. You got to this is a tough situation for him. You've got to give Carson Beck time, and you've got to open up some holes for those running backs. I think that they definitely have that possibility. We've seen it twice this year where they've done that, but you're going up against Alabama. This isn't Tennessee Tech. This isn't an overmatched Clemson. So you think can they win the trenches? Absolutely. They've got the guys. They've out-recruited everybody in the nation. They've got the Jimmies and Joes. Will they put it together on Saturday? Well, I mean that's why I'm not doing a prediction, because I just don't know how that's going to turn out. They definitely have the ability. And on the screen, I mean he is a people mover. Micah Morris, he's a road grader as well. And then you have the guys who can light on their feet like Monroe Freely. So if you're doing a pin and pull, or they're running counter or outside zone, they've got the guys who can fly to do it. But I would like to see it against an Alabama to know where this team is going forward.
Rodney Woolsey joining us here. You can read all of his stuff at ugasports.com. Carson Beck, I think a big matchup in this game is the passing attack against Alabama's secondary, which is a bit of a question mark still at this point, because we didn't get a great assessment against Wisconsin because Tyler Van Dyke got hurt so early. So looking at Carson Beck and looking at his experience having played against Bama a year ago, how confident are you that the passing attack is ready to potentially take advantage of a question mark for the Tide?
Well, you don't have Ladd McConkey, and we mentioned the aforementioned Brock Bowers, 2 explosive playmakers. So I'm wondering, who is Georgia's money guy? Who is it when it's 3rd and 8, which Alabama's going to put you in 3rd and 8. That's their MO. Who is the get out of jail free? It was Ladd McConkey. It was Brock Bowers. Now I think Dylan Bell can do it. Keep an eye, look for number 86. He's one of the most physically gifted wide receivers you'll find. He's strong as an ox. He runs great routes, and he'll win every 50-50 ball. But Carson Beck on the road has not been as accurate. Now, last year, he set the Georgia record for completion percentage, 72.7%. That's phenomenal. I mean, and it's his first year as a starter. He sets the school record for completing the highest percentage of passes. The issue is most of those were not far downfield. He has not hit on a lot of deep balls. His downfield passing attack has been hit or miss. So to back out those safeties and to make, to take advantage of Alabama's, again, I don't even call it untested secondary, but the question mark about their secondary, you want to see Arian Smith, who's one of the fastest players in the SEC, number 11. When he takes off, I mean, this is a guy who qualified for the 100-meter track championship at the NCAA, ran a 10.16. He can fly. If he's on that go route, can you hit him in stride? And Carson has had issues with hitting guys in stride. Sometimes he overthrows them because he's got the cannon for an arm. Sometimes, though, he's like, okay, well, I don't want to overthrow it, so he hangs it up a little bit. Then the player has to slow down to get to it. So I would like to see him hit a few guys in stride, and I'd like to know who is going to be that third down converter that you had at Ladd McConkey. It may be, it could be Dominic Lovett, the transfer out of Missouri. He's really good. I expected him to be Georgia's number 1 wide receiver this year. But again, I just haven't really thought, okay, here comes the passing attack. You guys are in trouble now. I just haven't felt that way all year.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Finally, looking at Georgia's defense, a little banged up. I guess not technically finally. Do we have any updates on Warren Brinson, Michael Williams, and Jordan Hall and their availability? Are they good to go?
Warren Brinson did practice last week, so I think he's back. Jordan Hall is much closer. That poor guy to have 2 surgeries on opposite legs.
Oh, it's terrible.
Surgery. That's just. I mean, I don't think I've taken lottery numbers for me, or just if I could pick the opposite of him, I would absolutely do so. Michael Williams was the big question mark, and that's the first question, or one of the first injury questions Kirby got yesterday, and he said hopefully. Now, a lot of times when Kirby does stuff like this, when it's a key player, he does not want to tip his hat. So all we are going to get is we hope to have him back, and they'll put out the injury reports, that they have to through the SEC, and it'll say questionable or something or game time decision. We are not going to know until it actually lines up. But what we are going to find out is on Wednesday whether or not he practiced. So I have, go text me and I'll let you know whether or not he practiced, and that'll give you a much better indicator of whether or not he's going to play. I expect him to be in the game, even if it's just as a distraction, because he changes the look of Georgia's defense considerably, because now you can move number 10 around, you can move number 11 around. All of a sudden, it gives you the ability to spy Jalen Milroe when you have such a dangerous edge presence, such a dangerous guy at the 5 spot, by getting him in there. So I think that you need him to win this football game.
Yeah, it'll be great, man. Really look forward to seeing it. And are we feeling good about the secondary matchup? I still feel like that group's a little untested, and I just have some concerns. So you feel good about them? Because you know better than I would.
It's Ryan Williams. Come on.
Well, I just think that's the one question I had coming into the season. I don't feel like I've adequately been. I don't know if I've just seen enough to feel like, all right, yeah, they're good there, no problem.
You lost 3 secondary players to the NFL. You lost your star, you lost Kamari Lassiter, the cornerback, you lost a safety. There's 3 out of 5 are gone, and you're replacing them with 4 and 5-star guys, but they are young. Julian Humphrey, first year starting. KJ Bolden, true freshman. Dan Jackson, walk on. Great player, don't get me wrong. It should be on scholarship. Anywhere else, he'd be on scholarship. But they have not been tested like they will be tested this weekend. Kentucky couldn't test them. Clemson obviously couldn't test them. That was there. But Dalen Everett, second year as a shutdown corner, he's Georgia's best one. But even he's given up a few passes. So it's because he's on the best receiver. So comfortable? I'm not comfortable. Are they capable? Absolutely. So what to me is going to be more interesting is how do they tackle in space? Because there are going to be times when all of a sudden Jalen Milroe, and I thought Kirby Smart made a good point yesterday, whether or not he's on schedule or off schedule, he's that dangerous. And to me, a lot of it's going to come down to, can these guys break off or defend a busted play? Can they stay with their receiver when they're scrambling on a situation where the rules aren't, the wide receivers moving in a way that's not in the rule book or not in the game plan, and how do you adjust for what Milroe does when the plays break down? Because sometimes he's more dangerous. Kirby said sometimes the worst thing you can do is cover all the wide receivers. Sometimes the best thing you can do is cover all the wide receivers. And I'm like, okay, well, that absolutely explains what it's like facing Jalen Milroe, and I want to see the secondary tackle in space, because I think that's going to be where they can be the most beneficial for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, buddy. Excellent stuff. Really appreciate it, my friend, and look forward to seeing you maybe at the game on Saturday.
Well, we'll be doing a watch along with Coach Donnan, so people can tune into YouTube and watch us as Coach Donnan watches the game and gets all the insights. It's like the Manning cast, but we were doing it before them, so I'm still waiting on the Manning to send me a 10% check on that.
I'm sure you'll get a nice royalty off that, my friend. Great stuff, Roddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, awesome stuff. Roddy Nabulsi there helping us break down Bama and Georgia, which is coming up just a few days from now. We have plenty of time to get into that matchup, I can assure you. All right, when we come back, give you a little bit more of a rundown about what the rest of the week looks like next on Mac and Keep in the Morning. Welcome back, McElroy Cubic in the morning. Jock 94.5 moving along here. If you're moving along in your house, you need to go and check out my friends at Crocker Moving Services. They're a local company owned by an Iraq War veteran, Eric Crocker. Crocker believes in hiring movers you can trust to complete full background checks and run drug tests on every single employee. These are good guys, and you can trust them in your home, whether you need your whole home packed up and move, your company headquarters moved across country, or you just want them to come rearrange a living room. These guys got you covered. They also do deliveries for furniture that you purchase need to get to your home. So call or visit them online today for a free quote. The website's crockermovingservices.com. It's crockermovingservices.com. Support your veterans by choosing Crocker Moving Services for your next move. All right. Rest of the week laying it out. All right. So this is kind of where we're going to be. And it's honestly going to be terrific. I can't wait for it. So tomorrow, we still haven't really been able to do a kind of a bounce around. Like, we haven't done much on Michigan SC. We haven't done much on Utah, Oklahoma State. I think it's worth starting to evaluate the conference as a whole. Like, we've done tiers in the past. Maybe we do our tiers tomorrow in the SEC, kind of dive through it and say, all right, well, this is kind of a separation weekend. So we'll see how things kind of all set up for us as we move forward. So
is this separation Saturday, Gregory?
Nah, it's a little early for that.
A little early for
that. The first separation of 6 separation Saturdays. Yes, I think that's where we're at. Look, for all of us here, for Saber, for Damian, for Cole, we appreciate you being with us. 3-man fronts next. Tomorrow we're going to dive in, though, go a little national, a little bigger picture. And then as we get forward to Thursday, it's going to be all in max ball because we got some massive matchups.
Let's go.
Gotta have it situations for some like Auburn. And man, it'd be great to have it in situations like Alabama. We'll dive into it this week. 3-man front is next.